Competitive game at its best. My opponent is actually a beast. Very strong player, GM, very sharp. He's very hard to beat in general. Like every time I play him, and I did play him before, it's really competitive. So we end up playing 3-0. It's still fast time control, and he was wiped. So 1e4. Excuse me, 1d4. 1h6, knight h6. If you look over my YouTube content and my streaming content, you would know that I've been playing, creating my own openings with own theory and ideas from scratch. So it's not, this is very typical for me to play. So you could argue and say that bishop takes h6 is pretty good. Ruin the king side, you may not be able to castle, and the double pawns, and it should be good for white. Typically, I think the computer may agree with that, but I think if you take fast enough on h6, the bishop on f8 gets so active on g7, and it's like a modern defense, but bishop really could prove really active at the cost of, like, you know, obviously like ruin the pawns and, you know, may have trouble with the king safety. You could take on h6. I would say you could delay it a little bit. Like once you delay, let's say 3-4 moves, and then you could take on h6 was better position. But my opponent did e4, so he's not taking right away. So I played c6, knight here, knight d5, knight f3. Now, do you guys notice something interesting about this position? Looks familiar. It's a Caro line with the two knights. I think this is a two knights Caro with knight sitting on h6. After bishop g4, I think typically you play h3, then you take on f3, and that's what happened really. So take here, queen takes, e6, following the Caro ideas. And then my opponent took on h6. Actually here, it does make a lot of sense. So the reason is I take, and he's actually castling along. He doesn't want to lose a turn, so he you know, I'm just going to take here, he castles. He actually developed that way, putting the rook on d1. So it's a good choice. So I played bishop g7, counting on some activity here, if I can. So bishop c4, I think bishop d3 could have been played, but you know, again, I think the gain here is, I feel like the bishop activity is so strong, so even on bishop d3 you could take on d4. So bishop c4 is probably better move because it may allow like rook e1 and some targets on e6. So I did knight d7. It's actually the only move, but it also makes sense to play. Knight f6, knight d5 is a very common idea. It's putting a blockader on d5. And my opponent played rook e1. I had two choices here. I could castle or knight f6. My opponent is actually asking me a question. Are you really going to castle here, or are you going to castle queenside? There's an opportunity here that I could probably play queen e7 and castle long. And actually put some pressure on the d4 pawn, perhaps with the rook being on d8. I decided to castle, and I felt like bishop d3 now the knight is sitting on d7. I don't have like queen takes d4. I feel like after bishop d3, this knight f6. Attack the queen and defend the on h7, right? So the knight defends here. So he played king b1. I can understand why king b1 is being played. What if he plays queen f4 while the king is sitting on c1? This may allow like queen g5. Even though white is slightly better, of course, I don't think he would win this endgame with a proper play. If we trade queens, it would be difficult to win that. Even though white is, you know, looks like a slightly better. So he wanted to move out of the way on b1, so he doesn't have to worry about this diagonal, which is actually a good choice. So knight f6 anyway, gain a tempo against the queen, attacking the queen, and then he has to move the queen, and then I gain a move, and then I played knight e5. Knight e4. Knight e4 is actually a good choice. The knight is, you know, is better position on e4, looking at, you know, potential attacks. And a5. So let's stop here though for a minute and explain what the point of a5. So when your opponent castle queenside and you castle kingside, usually if your opponent castle queenside, you attack him on the queen side, and he would probably attack you on the king side. So we are following that rule right now that he castled here. I do have to find some attacking ideas on the queen side, and he would have to find some idea on the king side. You can attack with the pawns or the, you know, the pieces. So bishop d3, I continue with a4. You could see that if my pawn get the e3, it becomes interesting to try to continue attacking him. So he played e3. You notice here that my bishop is really strong. Like, it's so active in this diagonal. And as a matter of fact, here I actually took the pawn, and I felt really good about this move. I felt like it was a good move by me because I could take the pawn, continue with activity here. According to the computer, if we look over the computer, I think c4 is actually pretty good for white. And I think if you move the knight or something, there's a strong pin going against the bishop because of my queen on d8. If we took a look at the computer, yeah, c4 seems to be a good move, even though queen b6 is a move. But there's still enough issues for me for that move, even though the computer is suggesting you could take on d4. It's telling me bishop takes d4 is best, but I end up doing like I think he did actually a different move. I think it's inferior move. He played c3, yeah, and I was happy to see that move. And mainly because I was like, take the pawn and leave. You know, I took the pawn and that's going to go back to g7, which is going to be good for me because if he end up playing c4, I could play queen b6. And now that's a lot stronger move because I'm actually attacking here with checkmate on b2 if he decided to play c4. So he played bishop c2. I think c4 was still in his mind. So I end up playing queen b6. Queen b6 is pretty good. Again, as I explained it before, he's just eyeing that. The bishop at g7 is still very strong with the activity. It keeps eyeing this diagonal. And here, I believe he played king e2. So I come up with a creative idea here. I wanted to find ways to continue attacking. If I slip here or make a slight inactive move, he's gonna start attacking me here on the king side. I would say g4 maybe, or knight g3, knight d6. They all would look at some kind of attack on h7 or the king side, as a matter of any kind of attack on the king side, because you could see that the ruined pawns could be a problem here. The next move is interesting, as I mentioned, so rook e5. So what's the point of rook e5 exactly? What are you trying to do? It's pretty simple. Rook e5 is being played so you could play rook b5, hitting on b2. And you're also using the rook and the queen and the bishop to continue attacking against the king. So here he has to really defend against b2 ideas, so he ended up playing rook b1. Now I play rook b5, continue as a potential attack, and here knight d6. According to the computer here, I think rook b3 is actually a draw. It's funny though. I mean, we both are not playing for a draw here. I mean, you play rook b3, we are not really looking for a draw, but you could tell here the computer is suggesting that this is actually equal position. But there's no way we both are playing for a draw. We both are playing for a win here. He has potential attack going on because of the king safety and the pawns, pawn structure in my king side, and I also having an attack on the queen side. We are not really looking for any kind of draws here. But it's funny that rook b3 is it's a draw. My opponent played a move after rook b3, queen e4. I would say pause the video and look for any possible tactics if you could find anything. Queen e4, before you pause the video, just give you one hint. We have to check what exactly was queen e4. So he ended up playing from the knight from e4 to d6, so he could play queen e4. And the idea is pretty simple. Queen e4 is, attacking on h7. Checkmate with the help of the bishop, of course, on c2. So if he wants me to play f5, which there's a way you could stop the checkmate, but queen takes e6, and then I go here, then go here, and then knight f7, and it should be winning for white. So that's what he's trying to do. But apparently queen e4 is a mistake, and it's a big mistake. Black should be winning now. So pause the video, check for any possible ideas. Spend 5-10 minutes, assuming that 10 minutes you're busy, you have to do something, you go back. Spend enough time on this position. If you're able to solve it, very good. Your tactics are pretty strong. You just maybe need to do more tactics, or you don't have to do any kind of tactics. If you cannot find it after 5 minutes, 10 minutes, then you have to work on your tactics. Meaning, you have to do more puzzles, whether on chess.com or any kind of site, as long as you just do more. If you do 5 tactics a day, try to do 10, 20, and keep doing them. It's funny, it's coming from me saying that. Both my opponent and myself did not find this tactic. It's funny as it sounds, we both didn't see it. If my opponent saw that tactic, he would not consider knight d6 in the first place, and he would never consider queen e4. So the idea is very simple for black. Now I could make the move, assuming you guys pause the video, did not solve the puzzle or the tactic. But here's the move. Rook takes b2. It's so strong that white has to take, and he cannot do anything about it. So what's going on here? Rook takes. It's pretty much forced, I think. Knight check on c3. And then he has to move to a1. He cannot play b here. The knight is covering both squares, e2 and b1. So king e here, and then knight takes e4. Very simple. You cannot take the queen because of the amazing bishop on g7, right? We talked about this bishop for the longest time, and that's one problem, one of the problems here. So if we go back to just to double check with the computer, just to confirm exactly what I'm saying, just to confirm that rook takes b2 is a really strong tactic. It's also suggesting rook d8 and, you know, rook b8. But the best of all, like rook takes b2, we could see that if you follow the line, rook takes b2, knight takes c3, king e1, and then knight takes e4. You cannot take back, you know, you cannot take back the queen. And it wants him to play knight c4. So obviously, you just lose your queen for nothing, and the attack still continues. So obviously, we both missed it. And it's funny though, I have to find that move. Otherwise, I'm getting checkmated. So I end up playing the losing one, the losing line. As funny as it sounds, f5 is what I did, but f5 is losing. It's just losing. And if we just open up the computer, +6. And I went from basically having a good tactic on b2 to just losing in one move. So he took on e6 here and knight f7. So obviously if I play king g8, there's a classic mate where he just play here, takes knight f7, right? He takes, he sacks the queen, knight f7, checkmate. I had to take. And then he took here. And I just tried one trick, one last try, just to continue. I mean, by the way, here he's training rook e8, queen e8, bishop here, and then checkmate. Whether it was a queen takes f8 or rook takes f8. So I did rook takes e3, some kind of a check. And then I think he has to take with the king, because if you take with the pawn, there's like knight check. And then the bishop's still playing a role here. So I think he had to take with the king. And then this queen I had to play queen c5 and then king e2. So I ended up playing this still mate going on, so I had to defend the mate, bishop f8, and then my opponent played rook e8. Now, one last try, one last thing. Obviously here, the position is lost. I mean, there's no question about it. You know, 200% is losing, not even 100%. So it's losing here for black. There's no way you could defend the checkmate. However, I did one check. I think knight takes e3. And it's just totally losing here. My opponent actually took on c3. Now, pause the video. Pause the video. Try to find anything. Do you find anything here? Spend 5 minutes. If you spend 5 minutes, you did not find the tactic here, any kind of tactic, then you do need to work on your tactics. I mean, I'm being serious about it because you do need to practice a lot. So tactics, when you do a lot of puzzles, they are patterns. The patterns help you finding tactics when there's a tactics does exist in a given position. Like here, like the one on rook takes b2 earlier. The patterns would help you find this kind of tactics. If you don't, when you do puzzles, the patterns seems to be the key. It helps you finding patterns. So if you don't find the pattern here, then you do need to do more tactics so you could improve your patterns, and then therefore your tactics would become stronger. So obviously, pause the video. If you found it, your tactics is probably good enough by now. If you did not find it, as I mentioned before, you have to basically do more puzzles. And as I once said before, if you do 20 puzzles, do 40 puzzles a day. And you have to be consistent about it. Like, try to do every single day puzzles. That would help you improve over time. You don't want to skip days. Like, you don't want to skip 2-3 days, then you come back. It makes us be less efficient that way. So obviously, I'm going to make the move now. It's pretty simple. You take here, you're getting hit by that one. Checkmate. The bishop, once the bishop gets to f8 and you take here, it opens up for queen a3 checkmate. My opponent missed this one, and it's pretty shocking for me that this happened. I mean, I missed one tactic, but I did not miss a second tactic. My opponent missed 2 tactics. And obviously, if we just go back here, to be honest, all my opponent had to do is like king e1. And if anybody's getting checkmated, it's actually me. And just to confirm that, here we go. King e1. It's still me knight takes c3 is a mistake. I mean, the whole position is collapsing. So king e1, and then I'm getting checkmated by forced rook takes. He's giving me a random line like e3, and just rook takes f8. And then you sack here, queen takes, and then the king is stuck on the corner. So obviously it's a good game. Dispute me and my opponent missing 2 major tactics. I think really the idea about this game is actually the opening, the tactics also, and also the potential of rook e5. Without rook e5 though, I wouldn't have this mating pattern like rook e5, rook e5, rook b5, rook takes b2. So I feel like here is really competitive. I think the computer around here, though, I think it wanted me to play rook e5, and I think g4 here was a nice move. And instead of rook b5, it wanted me to play rook d8, and it still seems to be a draw position here, believe it or not. So here, according to the engine, it's a draw was best play. So I feel like this is a really good game to share. Again, a win is a win, but obviously this guy is still very strong. You don't get this tactics with GMs that often, and it would be nice to find rook takes b2 during the game. That would be a really good tactic to do during the game. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for more videos in the next few days. Take care, folks.